Okay, we've got 30 participants, so if that's not everyone, it's pretty darn close, Haley. So
Okay. It is 6:31.
30 participants.
Sorry. Okay, I think we'll get started. So good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the 2023 Annual General Meeting for the Northern Ontario Curling Association. My name is Haley Smith, and I'm the president of Noca. This year marks the third time that we are conducting our AGM using an online meeting platform. So at this time, I'd like to have our executive director, Laura Forget, take a minute to explain how the meeting will proceed. So at this time,
you'll have to bear with me. You're going to hear an echo because YouTube's playing on my computer too.
Take a minute to explain how the meeting will proceed.
There we go. Okay. So for those of you who weren't with us last year or the year before, this is, I think, the third year that we're doing this via Zoom. So just some housekeeping notes for all of you. So if you could please keep your microphone muted unless you have the floor to speak. That's helpful to avoid feedback like that. If you could keep your camera turned off, especially if you don't want your video on YouTube, live streamed on YouTube. And it also helps save some bandwidth for yourself and others. The chat will not be regularly monitored. There will be moments, though, when the speaker will suggest that you can use this function to ask questions or to have the floor for comments. There will come a time when we need to move or second motions. At that time, if you would like to move or second a motion, please use the thumbs up function. If you would like to request the floor at any time, you can use the raise hand function. And there will be a time when everyone can vote on the motions, and those will show up as polls on your screen. So you'll be given 3 options for those, and you can click the option you would like to choose. And once everybody has voted on those polls, the poll will close and the motion will be carried. So I think that's all.
Okay, thank you, Laura. So at this time, I would like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like to request that a moment of silence be observed for those who have passed in the last year. Thank you. As a reminder, only club delegates are permitted to make a motion and to vote on any motions brought forward. Noca board members will not vote unless they are also a club delegate. All reports and statements have been previously distributed and circulated to the club delegates with the meeting package. This meeting is being live streamed in an effort to reach Noca's broader curling community. A portion of the meeting will be in camera following the completion of the agenda in order for club delegates to raise any matters of concern or interest to the Noca Board of Directors and Executive Director. At this time, I would like to introduce the Noca Board and staff. I've already introduced myself, Haley Smith. I'm the Board President as well as the Region 1 Director. Rebecca Carr is our Vice President and Region 2 Director. Jim Turner is our Secretary Treasurer and a Director at Large. Karen Saramaki is Region 3 Director. Dave Cutler is our Region 4 Director. Abby Deshane is our Region 5 Director. Julie Syme is Region 6 Director. Trevor Bono, Director at Large, and Amanda Gates, Director at Large. Our Noca Executive Director is Laura Forget, and our outgoing Executive Director is Mike Harris. I'd also like to introduce our guests for the evening. Catherine Henderson, the CEO of Curling Canada. Jennifer Ferris, Manager of Programs and Operations for the Ontario Curling Council. Candace Phillips from BDO Dunwoody. And Bobby Ray, Curling Canada Club Development Coordinator. Laura, could you please ensure a record is kept of the participants of this meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. Laura, can you please confirm that the notice of meeting was sent out to all club delegates at least 21 days prior to the meeting as required by our Constitution, and that the meeting is duly constituted?
Yes, I can report that a notice of meeting to all voting delegates was circulated on May 30th, at least 21 days prior to the meeting, as required by the Constitution. Thus, the meeting is duly constituted.
Thank you. We move on to report on credentials. Laura, can you please provide a report on the number of voting delegates present and confirm that we have quorum?
Yes, we have 23 of the association's 48 voting delegates registered for this meeting, and a quorum of 5 is required, so we do have quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. The agenda was circulated prior to the meeting. Are there any requests for additional items to be added to the agenda, including new business? And at this point, if you have something, please raise your hand icon. I'm not seeing anything. So can a club delegate please make a motion that the agenda be accepted as distributed?
So we have Kim Renier.
Thank you, Kim. And a seconder, please.
Dave Cutler. Oh,
Thank
lots
you,
of
Dave.
seconders.
Okay. All right. This is where you'll have your first poll. And please use the poll on your screen to vote on the motion. Okay.
Yeah, so we'd have just about everybody in, and that motion is passed.
Carried.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we come to greetings from Curling Canada. Catherine Henderson.
Well, thank you very much, Haley, and thank you everyone for having me as a guest. What I wanted to do is, first of all, bring greetings from Curling Canada on behalf of Michael Shefsky and the rest of the board of directors and our staff. I want to really thank the Noca board and the Noca staff for the incredibly important work that you do each and every day, working with your national body. Just wanted to point out a couple of things that have been particularly heartwarming for me this year, because I did grow up in Northern Ontario, and it remains a huge soft spot for me. I wanted to mention Team Burgess, the U21 silver, Team Dean at the National Wheelchairs achieving a silver. Of course, the McCarville and Horgan teams, really did a wonderful showing at the Brier and the Tournament of Hearts. And we love when Tracy Fleury wins a Grand Slam of curling. But I also wanted to let you know one of the highlights of the year for me was attending the U18 Nationals in Timmins. After a long hiatus, just having the opportunity to go up and meet the families, it gave me a great deal of pleasure and pride to know that curling has a very, very bright future. As well, the Sudbury was able to host the mixed doubles, the university and the college. So there's just so many young people that are participating. And I do want to assure you, your efforts aren't in vain. I can see numbers right now across the country that are telling me that people not only are returning to curling, but curling, when we left it before the pandemic was growing with young people, and it has bounced back. So that's all really wonderful. I also just wanted to mention that Haley, Laura, Mike, and a number of your colleagues have been participating as well. Jen Ferris have been participating, not only in changing the face of curling, but the follow-up meeting that we just finished about a month ago, that really took a look at what the major priorities are that we work in partnership with Noca on. And those include bringing more people into the sport, reaching out to people who've maybe not heard of the sport before, and bringing it to more diverse audiences. creating and working with our clubs to make sure that there's a high quality experience in every club and in any way that we can help. It certainly is about creating safe, inclusive spaces within those clubs. It's about looking at new ways of revenue models so that everybody is staying healthy. And of course, importantly for all of us is the notion of data collection, really understanding who those curlers are and what it is that we need. And I will say Northern Ontario continues to punch above its weight in terms of their participation, their future forward thinking, and really their advocacy for their clubs in the Northern Ontario region. So I'm going to stop right there. I also just wanted to mention that I'm on the traditional territories in Toronto on Treaty 13, and just very grateful to be able to speak to you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Our next guest to bring greetings is Jen Ferris from the Ontario Curling Council.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to remind everybody kind of what the role the OCC plays in the province. We are the recognized provincial sport organization with two members, one being Noca and the other being Curl On. And it is our great privilege to get to work with Noca and your board and your staff on a regular basis. And I just wanted to take a minute to bring you greetings on behalf of the Ontario Curling Council. Our chair is Jerry Sunwall, our secretary treasurer is David Blair. We have representation from both Curl On and Noca on that, and as well as some independent counselors. But I wanted to highlight some involvement of the Noca board members, Julie Syme and Trevor Bonneau. They have been great advocates for youth clubs and your athletes, coaches, officials, and ice technicians. And I also want to recognize a Northern independent counselor whose 3-year term is finished. Ivan Strawn has been a great contributor to the council over the last 3 years, and we appreciate his contributions and his attention to detail with Northern youth, and his advocacy for informed decision making with more data. So we really appreciate the contributions of those 3 people. As well, we really appreciated working with Mike for the past year. And Laura, we were sharing Laura for a couple of years, and it was a bittersweet to see her move to the ED position at Noca. I already miss her tremendously with what she was doing for us at the council, but we're pleased to support her in her role at Noca. And then we want to acknowledge also the contributions of Emerson. We continue to work very closely with Noca and Curl On as the unifying kind of agency. And I'll give you a few of our highlights later on when I have a chance to report in more detail. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jen. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening. Many of you already know Bobby Ray from his time as Noca Executive Director. Bobby is now the Manager of Club Development for Curling Canada, and he's going to speak to you this evening about the future of curling. So thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, Haley. And Laura, maybe just a quick sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Nice to see everyone. Again, my name is Bobby. I'm the Manager of Club Development at Curling Canada. I'm also a member of the Northern Ontario Curling Association, so it gives me great pleasure to have this opportunity to address you this evening. If you've been following either myself personally or the business of curling and our efforts the last couple of months, you will have seen that we've been on a bit of a cross-country tour, doing business of curling symposiums in different regions and branded under this theme of the future of curling. We spent some time not just looking at the day-to-day operations of a curling club, but really challenging what curling might look like in the future and some manageable steps we can begin to take to get there. If you missed it, if you didn't have the opportunity to be at one of those events in person, one thing we did at our last event in Chilliwack is we had all of our presenters go into a room and record sort of a video podcast, which is being released later this week. So all those presentations, all the content, it's not something that you have to miss out on. And I'm sure an email will be sent in your direction so you can watch those presentations. Somewhere between Regina and Red Deer, we were doing an event. I pulled over on the side of the street and attended the Noca Spring Region meeting and did a quick 10-minute presentation on 10 trends that we're seeing as beneficial for curling clubs to think about and perhaps integrate in their planning this off season. And I heard from Laura that there was interest in learning more about that. So this evening, we're going to take some time and do a little bit of a deeper dive. So you'll get a bit of the extended version of that presentation that we've been doing on the road. If you have questions, please make a note of them and we can answer them at the end. But I also have this presentation written in sort of an article form that we can send out to you as well. So no need to take too many notes. I don't have any slides that I'm going to put on the screen, so you're stuck for the next 20 minutes looking at my big old face for a little bit, but looking forward to digging into this. So what I would say to start off with is the world has changed in the decades since our clubs were established. The world changes every day and more quickly by the day. Curling has changed. If we look at the rules of curling, the equipment we use, the ice conditions that we play on, it's changed, but something that has changed very little is our business model. We're still selling memberships to men's, women's, and mixed leagues that run 2 hours every week for 6 months at a time. When something breaks, we have a bake sale. People do not date, dress, or dance in the way that people did in the past, and they will not continue to curl in the same way that generations before them did. And the risk of not changing brings us face to face with what I'm calling a blockbuster moment, hence the title of this presentation today. I think most people would be familiar with the story of Blockbuster. They opened their first store in Texas in the year 1985. Between 1985 and 2004, they opened 9,000 stores across the world. But in 2010, they went bankrupt and they were replaced by more innovative companies that were delivering a very similar service in new and refreshing ways. You think of a Netflix, for example. Blockbuster didn't go out of business due to a decline in the popularity of movies. Blockbuster went out of business because of a decline in the popularity of the way that they were delivering their product to their consumer. This story, it's not unique to Blockbuster. I think most people are probably most familiar with the story, but it happens to businesses in all different industries and all the time. My concern is that if we're not looking to the future and to change the way that we deliver curling as a product to a consumer, that curling could be the next Blockbuster. But we'll address that throughout the presentation on how we can avoid that happening. Anyone who says that the popularity of curling is in decline is wrong. The popularity of the way that we deliver curling is in decline. And we have data that can back this up. So Curling Canada partnered with Abacus Data in 2002. We did quite an extensive research study that told us that 40% of Canadians are interested in curling. It also told us that 52% of Canadians that are interested in sport are so for a combination of their interest in learning a new sport, but also for the social opportunities that are connected to that. So in my opinion, curling is tremendously positioned to take advantage of these statistics. This research also told us about some barriers that individuals perceive as they look to get into sport or into curling. 77% of people that we surveyed suggested that the need to find a team would be a barrier, so that's difficult to access curling as an individual. 77% perceived competing budget space as a barrier. 46% do not feel like they're welcome at their current level of experience, beginner level of experience. Not all people see themselves in the sport. They don't see curling as being for people like me. And while those are challenges, they're certainly not barriers without solutions. At a very high level, there are two things that we need to do in order to attract more people into the sport. The first one is we need to offer people what they want. We need to be desirable. To do this, I suggest that you take on the role of a social scientist. The next time that you catch yourself saying, kids these days, whatever's troubling you about kids these days, write it down and then offer that at your curling club. You'll get kids these days to come into your facility. The other way we can figure out what people want is we can ask. we go to different groups, audiences that we're not currently connecting with, and we ask them, what would you be interested in seeing as a curling experience? And just as importantly, when they tell us the answer, we need to act on it and experiment with what they're suggesting would be a desirable curling experience. The second thing we need to do is we need to make this offer easy to take action on or to be accessible. So going to the moon may be desirable, but it's not accessible. When you hear the word accessible, I think most people jump to thinking about mobility, and it's extremely important. So we can start there. We need to make sure that our facilities and the programs we offer, they're accessible to someone who might be in a wheelchair, who might use a walker or a cane or have other mobility limitations, someone who perhaps has a young child and comes into our facility with a stroller. But there are other sources of accessibility as well. You can think about finances as being an accessibility, and not just price. I think that's where we go in our mind is this price accessible to the people we're trying to sell to? But it could be the method. So are we asking people to pay with their checkbook still? Are we asking them to bring cash? Do we accept debit or credit? Can they register online? Can they pay with a method that is convenient for them? And then not just method, but timing. As we see the price of curling increasing due to increasing cost of insurance and utilities and other factors that come into our business, we might think about the timing in which we charge people to experience curling. Instead of one lump sum at the beginning of the season, perhaps it's some sort of payment plan that can be spread out a little bit more. Or maybe it's that your curling club offers multiple seasons. There's 2 seasons or 3 or 4 where they can pay each time they come into one of those seasons. We have ability being something to consider when we're thinking about accessibility. And we heard it in our research that people are concerned that their beginner level of ability wouldn't be welcomed at a curling club. So are we offering instruction? Are we offering skill appropriate programs, leagues? Are we doing learn to curls? Do we have beginner leagues, rookie leagues, greenhorn leagues, whatever you call it at your facility, where people can find their comfort and gradually improve and work their way into leagues where our longtime members are participating. And then we have availability. So are our clubs accessible in the way that we offer programs on different dates at different times of the day for different durations? Like how long are we asking people to participate in the sport of curling per outing? The frequency, so how often do they come out to have their curling experience? Is there flexibility? Can someone decide spontaneously on a whim that they want to go curling on Friday night? Or is there not that level of flexibility built into what we're offering? And commitment level. I think we'll hear a little bit more about this later, but commitment is such a big thing nowadays for emerging generations. How much time are we asking new people to commit to curling? Waiting at the intersection of desirability and accessibility, there are ample prospective new members for your clubs. So here we're going to get back into those 10 trends. Like I suggested earlier in the spring, we sort of just rhyme them off, but I want to take some time getting into them. And these are 10 trends that come out of research, they come out of experience, anecdotal evidence, speaking to clubs all across the country. And I think that they'll be important to challenge in your upcoming meetings. The first one is to be more inclusive. This is a space that I'm learning a lot about myself over the last couple of years. It's such a prominent topic to be speaking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only in curling, but in all industry. And it's a topic that when it comes up, clubs get a little bit defensive because they say things like, we welcome everyone here with open arms, or everyone is welcome to do what we do here. What I'm learning is that we confuse the words inclusive with friendly, because we're absolutely friendly. Curlers are some of the friendliest people in the friendliest spaces in the friendliest country in the world. But if we're only penetrating 2% of the population, and that's what our research would suggest, is that about 2% of any average community is curling, and we have 40% of the population that's suggesting they're interested in it, then we're missing something. We need to be more than friendly. There's a difference between welcoming people into our spaces to do what we do and welcoming people into a space that's designed for them. Inclusivity must be factored into the way we design programs, services, systems, procedures, promotions, policies, etc. If we were raised well, you might be familiar with the golden rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you would like others to do unto you, or treat others the way that you'd like to be treated. Being inclusive takes the golden rule one step further. It's not treat others the way that you'd like to be treated, but it's treat others the way that they would like to be treated. The second trend is to be more agnostic. Okay? In business, the term agnostic means that we follow a process that does not adhere to or depend on any specific criteria, which makes what we're offering widely useful. So an example would be like the Open League or the Anything Goes League, whatever you call it in your clubs. The days of the Monday night men's league, the Tuesday night women's league, the Wednesday night mixed league, the Thursday morning seniors league is of the past. If we can use more open leagues and simply divide individuals and teams by their ability level using, a ladder or a pool or a division, and somebody can walk into our curling clubs in the future and say, I just saw curling on TV, I'd love to get started. I'm hopeful I have this vision that we can respond with, would you like to play in our Monday league, our Tuesday league, our Wednesday league, or our Thursday league? And they would be welcome in any of those offerings. If we do that, we'll become more widely useful when people are available. Number 3 is to be more developmental. Okay, curling is technical, it's difficult. Anyone that's teed up a golf ball, swung a tennis racket, delivered a curling stone can understand that it's not easy the first time you go to do it, but we're not providing the same level of service as our other technical counterparts in sport. We have the golf pro, we have the tennis pro, we have a culture of development and instruction and things of this nature. Where in curling, it tends to be that someone shows up to the club, we throw them into the deep end of the pool, expecting them to teach themselves how to swim. They get paired with an angry skip who has a vacancy on their team for some reason, and they'll play lead for 10 years before they're allowed to take the mantle and invite their own friends. The emerging generation coming into our sport, they want to play with people they've met in the beginning stages of their experience. They want to bring their own friends, their own colleagues, their own neighbors and build a team. They're willing to invest in instruction, to be in the beginners league, to start at the bottom of the ladder, to play progressively more competitive matches and climb their way up to the top. We just have to build a system where they can do that. They want to learn properly, and they want to see gradual progression. Number 4 is curling in the future will be more digestible. So the popularity of curling is not in decline. The popularity of the 3-hour curling excursion every week for 6 months is in decline. So why not 6 ends? Why not 60 minutes? Why not a league that only operates for 6 weeks? Why not a league that operates once a month for 6 months? And why are we committed to a recurring schedule when I could close the lid on my laptop right now and go bowling or go golfing or do a lot of activities without a big upfront planning commitment? Number 5 will be to be more flexible. We can all recall the classic open house and registration fair that typically comes around the middle of October. Your members walk into a room, there's tables that line the perimeter of the lounge, and there's a table for the men's league, a table for the women's league, a table for the free lesson on the first Sunday of the curling season. And if you blinked, you might have missed it, and you'd be sold out of luck because you missed this one and only intake into the curling season. So we need to consider more intakes if we want to bring more people into the sport. We know that people's eyes are on curling mostly after October. If they don't know about curling already, they don't know about it when they're still wrapping up their golf season, they're closing their cottage, they're still engaged in some summer and fall activities. But they hear about curling from someone who's in a Learn to Curl program, someone who's playing in a league that they love. When they watch it on TV, when the Olympics comes up in a couple of years and they call the club for more information, we need to be ready to take people in at those points in time. And we're seeing clubs do this more and better. They have distinct, first half of the season, second half of the season. Some clubs have broken into 3 or 4 seasons. And this is really a great trend to get onto. Again, if you want to go curling, you really can't. You can't just up and go do it like you'd go for a walk, go for a drink, go for a dinner, or do anything else spontaneously and casually. But there's an opportunity there that if we have ice that is in excess and that somebody could be there to provide some basic instruction, allow someone to experience curling on a whim, that there's an opportunity. In my work, I've been reading quite a few master recreation plans. If you're not familiar with your own, it's something that I would suggest that you look into. Most municipalities have a plan for where they invest their tax-paying dollars into recreational facilities and opportunities for their citizens. And what you're seeing in there is that there are more flexible types of recreation opportunities that are climbing to the top of the priority list. Take something like Frisbee golf, for example, which is played outdoors. It's not a big overhead or investment by taxpayers, but you can play Frisbee golf by yourself. You can play it as a group. You can play for 10 minutes, an hour, 10 hours if you choose. You can play it in the morning, the afternoon, the evening. You don't have to make a big plan. You don't have to think much about doing it. We can get there with curling too. It's not the way that it's set up today. But if we are more flexible, we will be more highly favored by those recreation plans moving forward as well. And the last topic on being more flexible is thinking about post-pandemic. What I think might be one of the biggest opportunities facing us post-pandemic is that more people have more flexible schedules when it comes to work. More people are working from home. They work on flexible schedules where they could take a break in the morning or afternoon, and make up for it in the evening and weekend. So we have all this availability of ice that we never used to be able to sell is now profitable. And I can use my own experience as an example, is that a lot of people, when they're in their late 20s to early 40s and they're growing their careers and they're raising kids, they escape from our sport because they simply can't commit to it in addition to their 9 to 5, carting their kids around in the evening and so on. But I'm still curling because I curl Mondays at noon from 12 to 1:30 in a doubles league. And I would suggest that most of the people that are playing in that league are actually going to back to work afterwards. So it's quite interesting to see. Number 6 is to be more digital. So I understand how difficult it is to be the bad cop when you're operating a curling club. I used to manage a club for a little over 10 years, and you were faced with making difficult decisions and then having to walk into your curling club a couple of days later and face your members, maybe even curl against them. Luckily for me, that's not a position I'm in anymore. So tonight I thought I would take the position of sharing an unpopular opinion. And that is that there are absolutely no more excuses remaining for not having a very prominent presence in the online digital space. That means having a great website, that means being active on social media, and it means transacting business online. 2.9% and 30 cents for a transaction is simply the cost of doing business today. I can recall the first time that our club transitioned to Curling.io. This is just one platform that you could use. It's available to member clubs complimentary of your membership. There are other platforms out there too, but our club switched, and I went to an annual general meeting, much like this. We reviewed our financial statements, much like you're going to do in the next little bit. And there was a new expense line item that said processing fees. And I think it was about $4,000 in new fees. And it was called into question to say, what is it? What is this new expense? And can it be explained? And I said, surely. I hope that number goes up next year, is what I said. And I think people were taken aback and they asked to explain. I said, the more that number goes up, that means the more business we're processing. Basically, we're paying $2.90 for $97.10. And that compared to people that are watching curling on TV, they're excited in a moment about something that they want to try that's new. They go to Google, because this is what everyone does now, and they type in curling in Sudbury, for example. They find your club, they look for an opportunity to try curling and they don't find it. They're walking away and you've missed that opportunity. So we need to be better at our digital strategies. We have to not care about that there might be a transaction fee associated with it. It's an investment, not an expense. Again, there's tons of easy to use platforms out there that you can adopt, Curling.io being one of them. that was built by Curling Canada and their member associations. And if you reach out to Noca, they can connect you with more information on that. Number 7 is, in the future, we must be more remarkable. So if anyone is a Seth Godin fan like myself, I love to read his books and listen to his speeches. He talks about remarkable being something that's worth talking about, worth noticing, exceptional, new, interesting, and something that makes you go, wow. So whenever I think about being remarkable, I recall a bonspiel that I used to run as a club manager. It was declining in popularity, as might be the experience for others on the call. It was a very popular men's and women's bonspiel, 20 teams in each gender, full at 40 teams. And over the years, it was in decline. I think we got down to 20 teams at one point, and the bonspiel committee decided that the way to build this back up would be to drop the entry fee from $70 a person to $60 a person. And the next year, less teams showed up. So they decided they would drop the fee from $60 a person to $50 a person. And the next year, even less teams showed up. I think we got down to 14 when I started to work there, and I asked for an opportunity to work with a group of people to reimagine the way that we would run this event. And the strategy that ended up working for us is that we didn't actually reduce the fee, we started to put it back up. If you can picture the traditional bonspiel poster, what you typically see is, 3 games guaranteed, $200 a team, roast beef dinner on Saturday night, prizes on Sunday. And the first thing we did is we redesigned that poster. It was no longer going to be a boring roast beef dinner. It was going to be food that was fun and actually less expensive to put out to the customer. Instead of the big text at the top of the poster that said $10,000 in prizes, we scratched that out and we replaced it with text that said shitty prizes. We took $10,000 from the prize pool, we took the savings from the roast beef dinner, and we invested in the experience. So no longer was there just a band on Saturday night, there was a band on Friday night too. And it wasn't just an acoustic solo act, it was a full band. It was a good band, sometimes hiring bands from out of town. We actually once for a bonspiel hired a world champion DJ. I think it cost us about $3,500, but what was neat is that this DJ was playing the intermission at the Toronto Raptors game on television the week before he was at our bonspiel, and then all of a sudden he's on our stage on Saturday night. And that is something that is remarkable. People talk about it. Something else that caught people's attention, it was super simple, and this one was not expensive at all, is that we started a new tradition at a bonspiel that if you remained at the club until 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night, we would bring in McDonald's delivery to feed everyone. So we brought in cheeseburgers and French fries and junior chickens and all the rest. It was quite the sight to see. But again, it was just something that's remarkable. We'd have teams that drove 4 and 5 hours to be there. They go back to their town and be sitting at their club and say, we went to this bonspiel where we stayed up until 1 o'clock in the morning and we got McDonald's cheeseburgers. And I don't want to count how many McDonald's restaurants they crossed as they were driving back 4 and 5 hours back to their home club where they could have a cheeseburger anytime that they wanted. But it was in the experience that they thought it was interesting and that they had to share it with people. So looking back to that bonspiel today, I just played in it at the closing of our season a couple months ago. It's no longer $50 a person, it's actually $110 a person now, and they're back to 40 teams and there's a waiting list because people are excited about what they receive when they're there. That's value. There's a lot to be remarkable in that event, and it's a place we need to go with a lot of our programs in curling. The emerging generation that we're trying to serve, things that we know about them, they're more minimalist, so they care more about the experiences that they have over material possessions that they own, and they care more about quality over quantity. There's some friction here because as we're trying to attract emerging generations, we're finding out that their primary currency is not money. They don't care if the cost of coffee goes up by 25 cents next year, where our legacy curling member does to a degree. The primary currency of our new emerging generation is time. They care a lot about it. They care that they have flexibility. They care that it's in line with their schedule so they can do multiple other things, and they're busy. So again, the primary currency of people we're trying to attract now, the demographic every club says they want. They say they want 30 to 50-year-olds. They care about their time. Number 8 is that in the future, we're going to be more professional. So volunteerism simply just is not what it used to be. I might even dare say that we're facing a volunteer crisis. But in every crisis, there's an opportunity. And I think the opportunity here is we need to move towards a hybrid model. We absolutely need volunteers to do really great work, to be very passionate about our clubs, to share the message with their networks and their community, and to govern our organizations and such. But we also need people that are highly skilled and have capacity to deliver an enhanced curling experience, which means providing instruction, providing better ice conditions to play on so we make more shots more consistently. It means having better customer service so people feel good when they're at the club or leaving the club. If we think about the typical business, they don't hire people just for the fun of it. They hire people with an expectation of a return on their investment. And this is the same that I'm suggesting we do here. We're not hiring people for fun. We're not hiring people with money we don't have. We're hiring people to generate money that we want to have in the future. And I think we'll get to a point where we just can't afford not to invest in the right people with the right skills and an amount of capacity to invest. Number 9 is that in the future of curling, we will potentially be more endogenous. I had to pull out my thesaurus and change this word since my last presentation. What it means is to have an internal cause or origin. Our legacy business model at a curling club is to outsource a lot of curling to other bodies. We outsource to the volunteer committee, we outsource to the event manager, we outsource to corporations, and we simply are in the business of renting ice. A lot of us feel that way. And I'm not asking any club to necessarily stop what they're doing, especially if they're having success with it. What I'm asking you to do is to label it as a risk. It's a risk because if we don't own it, we can't control it. If we don't own it, there's a lack of control over developing our product. So are the volunteers, corporations, outside groups that are providing curling experiences in our club, are they attending these meetings? Are they plugged into the business of curling? Are they doing professional development? Do they know the trends and where the sport of curling could go? And if the answer is no, then it's a risk. I actually had one club that I was working with, and I asked them, how do you grow your audiences in your club? And they said, we don't. We just rent ice, and we have outside groups that are in charge of getting more members. And I thought, that's quite a risk. It's, again, you don't have to necessarily stop doing it. It depends on if it's working or not. But the fact that a curling club doesn't even control the growth of their own audience is a huge risk. So we bring more of these things inside, and we can make them more consistent, and they can be more in line with our brand. If people don't know what a brand is, it's what people say about your business. And if all these different groups are organizing curling, and there's going to be one experience on Monday night that's totally different than the experience on Thursday morning, and totally different than the experience on the weekend, it's a risk to have all those different conversations happening in your community about how great of a service or perhaps not the curling club is offering in that community. If not to take it over completely, because I know that there are challenges with capacity and being able to do those things. One thing we might start to think about is just implementing some quality control. You'll see other businesses do that where they don't own every piece of what their business is. It might mean a volunteer or a staff person sitting in on a meeting with an outside group that's organizing a fundraiser, Bondsfield, to say, you don't need to play 8 ends. That's way too long for people that haven't curled before. We should do an orientation and provide some instruction because that'll make the experience better for people that are playing, or whatever that looks like. It could be sitting in a meeting. It could be providing information and resources. There are ways to tackle that. And the last one that I'll leave you with is that in the future, the sport of curling at the club level, it needs to be more fun. So it used to be that you could count the number of banners hanging from the rafters, and that would be the measure of a curling club's success. But there is no money in being the most high-performing club in Northern Ontario. The number of curlers that are playing air guitar when their favorite song comes on the radio is the opportunity of the future. There's a market for casual, social, recreational curling where people are listening to music, they're chit-chatting with people on the sheet next to them, and all they really care about is that they're performing better than the last time they came out or the last season they had personally. If you add good food, cold beverages, big screen televisions, comfortable furnishings, and treat people the way that they want to be treated, you will have something that people in the future will desire. I'm going to leave it at that. I thank everyone for their attention, and I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Bobby. You've certainly given us all some food for thought and some great ideas as well. I'm not sure how much we're thinking about curling at this time of year, but as we move into the fall, definitely some food for thought. So yeah, if you can make your presentation available to Laura, and if anybody would like a copy of it, please please get a hold of Laura and she can send it out to you, because I think there's some great information in there. So does anybody have any questions for Bobby before we let him go? Let me just see.
Just people
Okay.
asking for copies of the article. So I'll definitely send out the link to that article. And as Bobby mentioned, this material, along with a lot of other stuff, will be coming out in podcast form as well, which is great, so that you can listen to it whenever is convenient for you.
Perfect. Thanks again, Bobby. Really appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
So we'll move on to the rest of our agenda. The next item is the adoption of minutes from the AGM June 20th, 2022, which was provided as part of the meeting package. So hopefully you all had an opportunity to review the draft minutes of last year's AGM. I would ask that one of the club delegates please move to accept the minutes of the AGM of June 20th, 2022, please.
Ron Silver.
Thank you, Ron. And a seconder, please.
Oh, there's a whole bunch down here. Christine.
Thank you. And again, we'll have a poll to vote on the motion. It should be appearing on your screen in a minute.
Can everyone see that?
No, I don't have anything on my screen yet.
Okay.
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
Perfect. So that motion is carried.
Okay, thank you, everybody. There was no business arising from the minutes of last year's meeting, so we'll move on to finances. And I would like to call on Candace Phillips from BDO Dunwoody to present the auditor's report for the past year. There she is. Oh, you're on mute, Candace.
Mute, yep.
Yep, there we go. Thank
There
you.
we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am a manager here at BDO in Thunder Bay, and I'm here to go over this year's financial statements with everyone. So just starting off with the Independent Practitioners Review Engagement Report. So this is the piece of the whole financial statement package that is our contribution to the year-end financials. And this has no changes, no significant changes in format or anything like that from prior year. So it'll look very similar if you guys happen to remember this from previous years. So of course, as usual, it always goes over management's responsibilities as well as our responsibilities as the accountant reviewing the statements. Some things just to highlight in here is that it does go over the fact that this is a limited assurance engagement that relies heavily on procedures involving inquiries and analytical procedures, which is definitely different than an audit. An audit is definitely more in-depth and involved than a review engagement, but it is still giving assurance for those who are reviewing the year-end statements. And of course, the piece that everybody's always concerned about is what was our conclusion at the end of our review. And we can see here in the very last paragraph, if you're following along, is that there's a qualified conclusion. So this one is basically the gold star conclusion with a little asterisk beside it. So this just means that due to the 50-50 draws, the lottery revenue that's generated, that we're not able to obtain sufficient evidence over the completeness of the revenue, which is very common for pretty much all not-for-profit organizations. So nothing unusual here or nothing to be concerned about. If you probably looked at majority of not-for-profits statements, you would see this qualification in there. And then it basically says that besides this one matter related to the fundraising revenue, that the financial statements, in our opinion, are free from material misstatement at the end of the year, and that they are in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. So then moving on to page 3 of the financial statements, this is the statement of financial position. And this is basically the snapshot of everything at year end. And then we can see it always starts off with the assets, so sort of the more positive side of everything, so off to a good step there. And we can see that the cash increased this year, and it is up to $214,599 as of April 30th. And we can see that the main cause for this increase here is related to some of the GICs, or the short-term investments on here, being cashed out during the year. So the GIC that's coming up in August, I believe, or July, when it matures, is down to $164,000. Well, accounts receivable is comparable to last year's at $28,658. So overall, the current assets for the organization at April 30th were $408,202. And then wrapping up the other portion of the assets is the long-term investments. So this is the single GIC that matures still a couple years down the line in 2025. And then there's also the equipment balance, which we can see increased almost 3 times what there was last year. And that was because there was a purchase of a timing system for about $13,300. And then there's a little bit of amortization, which is just the recognition of the wear and tear of equipment over time, you know, that everything does not last forever, that there is a lifespan for it all. So overall, the organization had $432,000 in assets at year end. And then sort of on the flip side of it here, we can see the liabilities starting off here. So there's the accounts payable and accrued liabilities, which includes things like wages and the such. So we can see that actually decreased from last year's $43,000, and it was down to $27,000 for the year. And that is just largely due to the timing of payments. So whether an amount is paid 2 days before year end or 2 days after year end can cause this number to fluctuate year to year. So there's nothing to be concerned about over this amount here. It just means that there was more paid by year end than the previous year. We can see the government remittances payable is comparable to last year as well at $14,144. And that mostly consists of amounts due back for HST, as well as a little bit for source deductions. The big piece here that's sort of exciting for this upcoming year is this deferred revenue. So there was at year end $57,347 deferred, and that could be spent on the upcoming season here for Ontario Trillium Foundation. They provided funding for their Resilient Communities Fund. So that's funding that's going to be seeing sort of in motion this fall with Noca putting on events and being able to hold stuff during that time. So overall, there was current liabilities of $98,949. And then wrapping up sort of the liability side is there's some deferred capital contributions for just over $2,000. And this is basically what is remaining of some 2016 funding. So many, many moons ago now from 2016, and it's just recognizing that revenue over the lifetime of the assets that were purchased back in 2016. So we'll just see this balance continue to decrease bit by bit each year. And then wrapping up this side of the flip side of sort of the assets is the net assets for the organizations, which we can see totaled 331,000 and change. And we can see that about 100,000 of that has been internally restricted. So that means the board has made the choice to set aside these accumulated funds that come from all the previous years so that they can be used for specific purposes, where the remaining portion of the 230,000 is unrestricted. So that basically wraps up our snapshot of everything at April 30th. And then if we scroll on into page 4, the statement of operations for the organization, we can see that revenue totaled for the year $292,958. And this was made up of a bunch of different sources. We can see that competitions increased up to 68,000. Curling Canada contributed 20,000 in partnership funding. Deferred capital contributions, again, that's just that bit of 2016 funding being recognized. We can see the 50-50 or lottery revenue was up over 36,000 was brought in. Membership dues are down a bit this year to 85,000. Miscellaneous income is holding solid at 20,000. And the Ontario Curling Council, consistent with prior year, is providing 33,000 in operating grants for the organization. And then we can see that the Ontario Trillium Foundation has been kicking in some funds as well for the year. And this is all related to sort of the recovery from COVID-19, which is a huge help because that did sort of throw a wrench in things for a couple years there. And then just on the other side of it, we can see there are a multitude of different expenses that added up to $351,219. Some of the large items in there would be, of course, like the competitions cost, contracted services, the lottery profit share and payout, as well as travel, which we can see that's basically a sign that, you know, things have gotten a lot better is when we see travel costs go up again, people are able to get out and go along there. And we can see there's some personnel, which that would be any salaries and benefits in there as well, as some professional fees, which would be any legal fees, and of course the accountant's fees as well. So overall, there was a loss of $58,261 for the association this year. But of course, we can see in the prior year that there was actually a surplus of 74,000. So really the net difference is not as significant as you would expect to see there, that it sort of balances out at the end. Because with most not-for-profits, we would be expecting them to be operating around a net zero surplus loss at year end. So it's right in line with what we would expect for a not-for-profit there. We're not going to go through the rest of the financial statements unless somebody's got a specific question there. There's just a couple more schedules that sort of go over a breakdown of like how the net assets have changed for the organization, as well as how the cash has changed through the year. You know, things like purchase of capital assets and non-cash items and such. And then there's many pages of notes, which would make some good bedtime reading if you're having a hard time and, you know, counting sheep's not working. Unless you do love the financial numbers like myself, but otherwise we'll just sort of breeze past that point there. So I guess at this point, if anybody's got any questions for me, feel free to bug me, or if something comes up even after the fact, you can reach out to Laura and she can get a hold of me.
Okay, thank you, Candace. Yeah, that's a lot of information to absorb in a short period of time for sure.
Yep.
And I know we had an opportunity to talk to you about this last week and go over it. So it makes more sense the second time around, I can tell you that. But yes, by all means, if anybody does have any questions regarding the financial statements, please submit your questions to Laura, and then we can get them answered from Candace and get back to you. So seeing that there's nothing in the chat at the moment, would one of the club delegates please make a motion to accept the draft financial statements for the year ending April 30th, 2022 as presented?
Ron Silver.
Thank you, Ron. And a seconder, please.
And Pamela Morel.
Okay, thank you, Pam. So you'll see a poll coming up on your screen again in a minute. If you could please vote on that motion.
Okay, and that motion is carried.
Thank you. So our next motion is, could somebody please make a motion that an accounting review for 2023-24 be conducted?
Ron still has his hand up. Are you making that motion too, Ron? Okay, and
Ron?
so James McPherson and Dave Cutler.
Okay, thank you. And again, there will be a poll up on your screen to vote on that motion.
That motion is carried as well.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And we've got one more motion regarding the financial piece. Could somebody please make a motion that BDO Dunwoody LLP Thunder Bay be named as our auditor for 2023-24?
Mark Lefebvre.
Mark,
and
thank you. And a seconder?
Kelly Kenny.
Thank you, Kelly. And one more poll should be popping up on your screen.
And that
Okay.
motion is carried.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you again, Candace.
Thank you. Have a great summer, everybody.
Thank you, you too. Okay, the next item on our agenda is board and staff reports, which were circulated to you earlier. I'm not going to go through the president's report. It's not very long, so please take a few minutes to read it. I will let the executive director, both past and present, speak to their reports. If that's okay, Laura or Mike, do you want to start first?
I'll let Mike go ahead. I'm just going to spotlight you. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Microphone on here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, thank you, everyone. First of all, I just wanted to thank the Noca board for their support throughout this season. It was nice to see everyone back on the ice and returning to a little bit of normalcy for all of us, getting back into curling again, which was fantastic. You know, when I look back over the year, there was obviously several highlights that we need to go through, and obviously some struggles as well as curling returned. You know, I think if you go through my report, there was at the start of the season, there was a lot of concern as to how healthy the club's going to be coming back, and as Bobby mentioned in his report, you know, we really have to just change the way we're doing business. But you know, any downturn in numbers at members with membership at different clubs certainly was counteracted by the enthusiasm of everyone kind of getting back to it. So recovery is coming, and hopefully, I know many clubs are back to normal levels, and hopefully those that aren't are going to continue to strengthen as the next couple of seasons come along. So, firstly, I'd like to, again, as I mentioned, the board has been very great support, but you're in great hands with Laura. One of my reasons for shifting roles with Noca was there was an obvious disconnect for me being in the South, and I think it was noted. A few of the people that I met, there was definitely something missing when it came to kind of being on the ground up there. So Laura's going to do a fantastic job for you, and she was invaluable to me in supporting role, and I'm looking forward to reversing those roles and trying to help her be as successful as possible in her role as your new ED. So, from an operational standpoint, Bobby has a lot of great ideas. There's a ton of stuff going on. Status quo, just for the most part, isn't going to cut it anymore, and it's not unique to Noca. It's one of these things that, as we look across all of the different member associations in the region, the meetings I went to all through the winter months with the different associations, it's a recurring story with trying to figure out what different way to do business. So I encourage you to get Bobby's report and kind of try to implement as many of the new ideas as you can possibly. It's just going to be really important for us to not think of curling in the traditional. Although we're a game of tradition, we need to just kind of look a little bit different ways of doing business, which change is always a little bit scary, but I think for the most part, it's less scary when you have allies. And I think in Laura and myself and Bobby, certainly you've got a lot of support there, and it's going to be really important for all of us to just continue to move forward. And again, it's not unique to Noca. It's not unique to curling. In fact, there's a lot of other. My background is in businesses as a golf professional, and golf's gone through this over the last number of years. And as Bobby mentioned in his report, other sports they've just been trying to find ways to adapt. So whether it's a doubles league at lunch as they do in North Bay, or whatever that happens to be, I think it's going to be it behoove all of us to just kind of use that business of curling portal on Curling Canada's website to look for new ideas and continue to grow. Other things that are coming up that are exciting, as was mentioned by Candace, the deferred revenues from the Trillium Foundation grant are towards that Thunder Bay Youth project we've got going on. We saw about 1,200 kids with our Thunder Bay Youth coordinator Emerson, who did a great job up there, and then we have some funds continuing to be used for that through the end of calendar year 2023. There's a couple of exciting projects on the horizon with shared services with Curlon and OCC and Noca that I'll let Laura talk to a little bit in the future months. There's not I don't want to get into too much of it right now, but at the end of the day, one of the key parts of business that I'm going to be focusing on moving forward is trying to secure some sponsorship for our major events and continue to have to help Noca generate some revenues. So I'm looking forward to continuing on in that role, and I'll kind of do what the board and Laura see fit for me over the next few months, and I look forward to seeing everyone back on the ice in 2024. At the end of the day, I was really excited to take on the role, but I know I wasn't doing it justice, being kind of living down here, and at the end of the day, as I said, I think Laura's got a better handle on kind of the pulse of Northern Ontario than I do, and she's going to do a fantastic job. So as I said, I'm looking forward to getting involved and securing some sponsors for the next couple of seasons. Ideally, get 2, 3, 4-year deal in place. We've also got a couple of projects upcoming to produce some promotional videos for the clubs, all of you to use to promote curling in your own specific region. we'll get into details on that a little bit more in detail later. But we're still working, and we're still, you know, even though it is the off season and summer is coming, it's been slow to arrive in some places I know, and combined with snow and or smoke, depending on where you're living, it seems like spring's been slow to arrive, or summer's been slow to arrive. So yeah, we got definitely have some things still planned for the next few weeks, and I said I'm excited to continue working for Noca in the upcoming few months. So you know, as I kind of turn things over to Laura for her report, I know I just wanted to emphasize that I've you know, really enjoyed my time working with everyone up there, and you know, I'm still here to support Laura. And you know, last of all, just it was kind of my privilege to work with the board. I mean, it's been I won't say eye-opening, but it was certainly enlightening. My daughter was curling up in Noranda for the Canadian Juniors U21s, and as I drove past North Bay through New Liskeard and all the regions up there, it just kind of dawned on me the size and the scope of the region. It just is much bigger than Southern Ontario. I can go from Ottawa to Sarnia in about 8 hours, and that is certainly not the case here with Noca. So you know, it was a privilege to work with everyone up there, and you know, you've got a great group of clubs, a great community feel, and every place I visited up there, I certainly felt welcome, and I'm looking forward to continuing to support Laura as we move forward. So the ED report.
Thanks very much, Mike, and thank you too for your contributions over the last year. And we certainly all wish you the very best in the future. I know that you've got lots of irons in the fire, so you're not going to be bored. I know that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Laura.
Thanks, Haley, and thank you, Mike. So my report, I guess, is twofold, because I'm leaving my role as competitions coordinator, sort of, because I'll still be your contact for competitions going forward. So the first thing I'll do is just highlight competitions for this year. And Karen, if you have anything to add when I'm finished, please feel free to jump in. So my report was also included in the package, so I won't go through it in too much detail, but I just wanted to cover a few highlights. First being a huge thank you to Karen, who is an invaluable resource to this organization, and she was to me. She was a huge support to me all year. And as you all know, she works tirelessly for Noca. So we thank her for her knowledge and her expertise, especially when it comes to officiating in competitions. Another huge thank you goes out to all of the host committees that I worked with this past season. All of you do so much work on the ground to make these competitions a great experience for our athletes. So it was a pleasure to work with all of you this year, and I look forward to those who I'll be working with this coming season. One of the big highlights this year, as many of you know, is the new timing equipment and officiating equipment that we purchased. So for any of you who had the pleasure of working with those IBM ThinkPads, or we're frantically trying to update Windows before an event with the old timing equipment, we've got some new stuff, some shiny new equipment. So it worked well this year. We had a few kinks to work out because we also adopted a new timing program, but it brings us more in line with Curling Canada and the program that they're using at their national events. So that was great, and our officials were thankful as well to have some new radios and some laser measures as well. And as Catherine highlighted in her remarks at the beginning, we hosted some amazing national championships in the North this year. So I had the pleasure of being in Timmins for the U18. Nothing but good things from the parents, the athletes, the fans that were there. It was an incredible experience for everybody involved. So congratulations to the McIntyre Curling Club for hosting that event. And I know Mike was able to attend the University College and Mixed Doubles Championships in Sudbury. And what a great partnership that was between multiple clubs to come together and be able to host that event. So congratulations to all of those host committees and the volunteers as well. Again, just to highlight our incredible performances at the national championships this year, we had 6 podium finishes this year. 1 gold, 4 silver, and 1 bronze, which is incredible for our quote tiny little MA up here, and not geographically, but numbers wise, up here in the north. So congratulations to all of those teams again for those amazing performances this past season. And looking ahead to next year, we're very, very excited. So this was spearheaded by Karen. Actually, we're very excited to be introducing a 2-person stick championship, provincial championship this coming season. So that'll be hosted at the Fort William Curling Club. And the winning team will move on to the Canadian National Championship in Bobcaygeon this year. So something to consider for all clubs as you open the season. If you don't already have a dedicated stick league, there'll be an opportunity for those people to compete this coming season to go to a national championship. We do have tentative sites for almost all of our events next year. And our men's and women's provincial championship was awarded to the Little Current Curling Club. So they will be hosting that in January. Their host committee is already hard at work. And the Ontario Winter Games will be hosted once again this year. So this is not normal that it's hosted in back-to-back seasons, but last year's games were postponed because of COVID. So this year, the games are actually being held in Thunder Bay in the north. So very exciting. So we hope to see lots of teams out to those qualifiers, which will be hosted by the Ontario Curling Council. And youth will be able to compete in both U18 fours and the U20 mixed doubles formats for that. And we're also excited to be hosting in 2025 the Canadian Masters. So we are looking for a community host club for that event. So if that's something that is of interest to your club, please reach out to me. And I guess now I have been making for the last 2 months, the transition to executive director. So thank you very much to Mike, to the board, to Jen Ferris for helping me make this transition. It may be the off season for on ice curling, but it's certainly not the off season for planning or for boards or for staff. So it's been extremely busy the last 2 months, preparing for the AGM and for doing fiscal year end and all of those things. So I am looking forward to diving into the nitty gritty of working with the clubs going forward. So this season focuses will be creating efficiencies, and I'm sure Jen will speak to this as well, but creating efficiencies between the 3 organizations in Ontario. We're really looking forward to some of the ways that we can stop duplicating the work that we're doing, or triplicating as it were. More collaboration and communication with the clubs. I've worked with a lot of you in the capacity of competitions, but there's a lot more work to be done in club development and bringing more people through your door. So I'm excited to get into that. And data, we all love being asked for data, but I've learned in the last 2 months that data is extremely important for things like grant applications, for finding out where the gaps are that we need to fill. So we're going to work on some more efficient, some easier ways to collect your data to be able to provide better services to you. So with that, I think I will hand it back to Haley, who will then hand it off to Jen Ferris, I think.
Well, thank you very much, Laura. And yes, I know you've been very busy the last couple of weeks trying to pull all this information together. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you for all your hard work. And I know that you've got all kinds of plans coming up for the coming years. So you're going to continue to be busy. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And with that, we'll move on to the Ontario Curling Council with Jen.
Thanks, Haley. Thanks, Laura and Mike, for your reports. I think I would be remiss if I didn't throw some appreciation to my team. It amazes me every single day when I see the size and scope of this province. Like Mike alluded to, I think he drives a lot faster than I do, because I could never make it to Windsor to Ottawa in 8 hours. But I am from the north, and I think half of my team is from the north, if not 3/4 of them. So we understand the challenges of Northern Ontario, but also we understand the challenges of Southern Ontario too. So what's really great about the council and Caroline and Noca working together is that when things can get figured out in the province of Ontario, things usually work across the country very well. And as such, we are a huge contributor to, I think, a lot of projects that happen nationally, because there are such great programs and services and best practices coming out of this province, thanks to the work of the few staff that we do have. So I'd like to acknowledge my staff. Sean Turiff is our HP manager. Andrea Ronnebeck lives in Kenora. She is our education manager. We shared Laura this year, obviously in North Bay. Our social media person and our bookkeeper we share with Caroline, but our social media person actually lives in New Liskeard. So we have great representation in the north and from the north. Sean's from Parry Sound, which some would argue is kind of the north, but we'll see. That's up for debate. So we did provide a written report. It was quite extensive, but I wanted to highlight a few things. Remembering that the OCC plays the role of representing curling in the province. So we attend many multi-sport things, events and whatnot, representing the sport of curling for both North and South. So that Laura and the executive directors from the South can focus on curling. We also represent curling or the province of Ontario and many Curling Canada efforts. And you'll see many of our staff and myself participating in committees and, updating content of a number of programs. And so just know that Ontario and Northern Ontario are being well represented, both in a multi-sport world as well as a sport specific world. And they're very, and we're quite highly regarded. A couple of our highlights from last year: the OCC did assume responsibility for the operation of the youth summer camps. So it's Trillium and Amethyst in 2022. That was the first time we've operated them since COVID. We did operate them around 3/4 of capacity, and we did post a loss in 2022 on the camps. But we felt it was really important to get kids back into curling post-COVID. And I'm so happy to report we're full for 2023. And Amethyst will start in about 10 days or so. It'll have 60 campers at it and a full, I believe 100% full Northern Ontario staff coaching at that camp. As well attending that camp, we partnered with Curling Canada to run a diversity and equity project. And we're able to sponsor a number of BIPOC youth to attend Amethyst to Trillium with a full full tuition covered, as well as some travel costs. So we're doing our best to influence or improve diversity at the youth level. We were able to support a youth camp in Fort Frances with some in-kind services from our education manager. We operated a Canada Winter Games, a Parasport Winter Games, and an Ontario Winter Games, some of those games happening at the exact same time. And Laura was a huge player in making that happen. I don't know how she made a 43-team round robin work. It was insane at the Guelph Curling Club, but she did it, and our teams fared very well at the Canada Winter Games. We operated an ice technician workshop. This was a brand new curriculum. So I actually sat on a committee for Curling Canada to revamp all the ice technician programs. So we had, I think, 18 attend the course last July in North Bay. And again, I think starting the 1st, July 1st, very soon, we'll have another 17, 18 participants, many from the North attending there as well. The Ontario Curling Council has been working with the benefit of a grant from the Ontario Parasport Collective to grow wheelchair curling in the province of Ontario. We tried to run a recruitment event in Northern Ontario. We're going to try again. It just didn't work, but we've been able to approximately double the number of wheelchair curlers in Southern Ontario with this kind of proven recruitment program. So that's pretty exciting because that discipline was hit very hard during COVID. The Ontario Curling Council nominated Dick Henderson, one of our coach developers, for an NCCP Coach Developer Award, and he was actually granted that award. So we were able to present that to him this past season. want to thank Dick Henderson for his years of service, not only as an NCCP coach developer, but he actually served in the role of a technical lead for Noca. He's worked with our high performance athletes, and I know he's still very active in the Thunder Bay area with the youth curling group there. So he's just someone who deserved recognition. We continue to support the National Sport Trust Fund. We usually have about 50 to 60 clubs engaged in this program. Just to give you a scope of a size of the, an idea of how big this program is. In 2021, curling facilities raised approximately $478,000 through fundraising. There was charitable tax receiving programming, and they were able to direct that. A lot of that went to sustainability funding during COVID, but can also go towards your actual programming and operational costs, infrastructure, so equipment, replacement, whatnot. It is a viable way for curling clubs to earn money, or to raise money, sorry. So I just wanted to highlight that. And if your club doesn't have a National Sport Trust Fund project open, please feel free to reach out to myself or Laura, and we can get you started on that today. We were able to support a number of Northern Ontario teams with their next gen and high performance program funding. I will fully disclose that this was undersubscribed by Northern Ontario teams. So I would really, really, really like your Northern Ontario teams to apply for the next gen funding. There is some specific spots that are reserved for Northern Ontario teams. The intake is now open for the 2023-2024 season, with application period closing on July the 17th. We were also able to support teams from the U18s, U21s, and the wheelchair teams, so the winning teams with some Quest for Gold funding to attend national championships. We continue to make ongoing professional development and NCCP education available to coaches. Again, keep an eye out for our webinar series. That's an easy way for everybody to get that valuable information. And during the 2022-2023 season, the Ontario Curling Council had to reapply for our position into the Ontario High Performance Sport Initiative operated by the Canadian Sport Institute. This is what provides the majority of our high performance funding. We were successful at gaining entry and actually increased the amount of funding that we received from this program. So we have funding secured for the next 3 years for high performance in Ontario. I would like to thank all Noca clubs who hosted OCC competitions and events over the past year, and remind you that we are looking for hosts in 2023 as well. We have some exciting new events. So remember how Bobby was talking about, just trying to assimilate new curlers into your club. We have an exciting format, an adult triples bonspiel that we would like to launch this year. We believe it's a win-win situation for curlers to have that positive social experience of a bonspiel, but also get to play every position and not just get stuck playing lead for the next 10 years. And also for your clubs to make some money on parties and, bar revenue and whatnot. So we would love to host some adult triples events in Northern Ontario. So if your club might be interested, please reach out to me. As well, one of the most effective developmental tools we've noticed is the discipline of triples. We'd like to host some U15 triples days. So those Saturdays where you might not have anybody on your calendar, we'd be happy to operate a triples developmental day event. As well, we're available to host coaching and train the trainer workshops, ice technician development, and we're really going to try to do a little bit better on some officiating training this year. As Laura mentioned, we'll be in Thunder Bay and in February for the Ontario Winter Games, and we're going to be focusing on working with our partners Noca and Curl on some back of house efficiencies. So it was very evident the last week or so where we had to reapply for our government funding. As a council sport, we have to submit everything in triplicate. Everything is done 3 times over. I think there was upwards of 53 uploads I had to put in there just to justify our government funding. So we know we were able to get to a joint strategic plan because curling is curling in Ontario. And so we're really examining how we do things, and yet we're very careful to protect the identity of all 3 organizations. So this is back of house efficiencies. I've been sharing staff with Curl On for 10 years. We shared staff between Noca and Curl and OCC for the last 2 years quite successfully. And I think the service level for all clubs in Ontario has increased as we became more cohesive units working even better together. So I think there's some real exciting opportunities there. And I think evidence of that is the one that maybe we've been working the hardest on is our new website that's intended to be almost like a funnel for all things curling in Ontario. And in fact, that's the name of the website. It's curlingontario.ca. We'd like it to be a starting point for everybody just, interested in trying the sport or, looking to discover something or wanting to find a course or a competition or whatnot. Try checking out curlingontario.ca. It's still a little bit of a work in progress. We'll be updating content continuously, and we'll be merging more and more content from Noca and Curl On in there as we get going. But to learn more about the Ontario Curling Council and what we do or what we have planned, please go there. You'll find our latest AGM and our financials and whatnot that we just posted today because we just did that all last night. You can subscribe to our newsletter and you can follow our social and learn more about what we're doing on behalf of curlers and clubs in Northern Ontario and Southern Ontario. With that, I'll sign off. Thanks, Haley.
Thanks, Jen. Lots of great information again. And, if anybody has any questions of Jen, please feel free to reach out to her. OCC always has lots of great ideas and lots of initiatives on the go. So Noca and Curl On are usually the beneficiaries of those initiatives. So thank you so much, Jen. And it's a pleasure working with you for sure. So that brings us to the end of those reports. So could somebody please entertain a motion to accept the reports of the Board of Directors and staff for 2022-23 as presented and distributed?
Marie Louise from Hearst.
Thank you. And a seconder, please.
Where'd it go? Ron Silver.
Ron, thank you. Okay, you'll see a pop-up poll in a few minutes to vote on that motion.
Okay, that motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the acts of directors, and just before we get into that, my window's open. There's a train I can hear coming, so if you hear a train whistle, sorry, it's going to be part of our meeting minutes. Could somebody please make a motion to ratify the actions of the Noca Board of Directors for the 2023-24 fiscal year?
Kim Meunier.
Thank you, Kim. And a seconder, please.
Ron Silver.
Okay, once again, there will be a poll pop up on your screen to vote on that. And it looks like that motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, under new business, we've got a couple of things under new business. Noca would like to take this opportunity. Oh, there we go. I'll wait for a second. We would like to
it's fitting. This is with some fanfare we have here. We're about to announce some award winners, so let's.
Yeah, timing was pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, we would like to take this opportunity to announce the winners of our volunteer awards for 2022-23. So for coach awards, we've got Rosanna Ferletti and Brian Rajala. Volunteer awards, Dave Forrester, Kevin Stranges, and Andy Davidson. The club award went to Fort William Curling Club. Life member, Roy Cook. And then our new award, the Leslie Kerr Builder Award, to Kim Beaudry. So congratulations to all our award winners. And keep in mind that we will be asking for nominees for volunteer awards again early next year, early 2024. So start thinking about people or clubs that you might like to nominate for these various categories. The other piece of new business is the marketing campaign, and Mike touched on it a little bit. Noca will be launching a marketing campaign to assist clubs with promoting curling in advance of their fall registration. A marketing fund had been established during COVID with the intent to utilize the fund for the benefit of our clubs once COVID restrictions had lifted. So the Noca board is currently exploring options for a marketing tool that can be used by all our member clubs. So we haven't forgotten about it, and we are working on it. So at this point, we would like to thank those who have joined us through our live streaming feed. We will be ending the live stream portion of the meeting, and we'll continue the remainder of the meeting with our club delegates and the Noca board. So Laura, if you could